I want to welcome you and welcome everyone today as we take our tour of the site of an incredible, iconic landmark that will be here in San Jose. I'm born and raised here in San Jose, and we were just talking earlier what used to be here. How many people are from the area, born and raised in the area? You remember what was here? Remember downtown Dotson? Not all this traffic, but and it was quite different. And so I'm very, very proud of this amazing, incredible project that will be happening, and so I welcome you again. So during the tour, you may have some specific questions based on the areas that we cover. So if you ask a question, you will be on camera as we're videotaping. If you want to ask a question and do not want to be on camera, you can submit it in writing and it will be answered. All right. Also, as we transition to the other side of the park, there's bathrooms over there if needed. Just want to let you know, okay? So right now I'd like to introduce our tour guides. If you want to stand up here so everyone can hear you and see you. And they said, Steve said, you don't have to stand up here, Sean. So. So with us today is the Deputy Director of Capital Programs with the City of San Jose, Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services, Nicole Burnham, right here. This is the way it should be, ladies and gentlemen. This is the way it should be. We also have Southwest is here today.
It is Southwest.
And by the way, just a quick announcement, we're going to be pausing as planes go over. So if you're in the middle of a question, we may have you ask it again, okay? Right here, the Deputy Director of the San Jose Guadalupe River Park Conservancy, Joe Salvato.
Good morning.
And Mr. Steve Borgenhagen with Urban Confluence Silicon Valley, right here. Nicole, you might want to say a few words about your background and how you see what's happening today.
Sure. Can you all hear me, or do you want to come in a little? I mean, I can be loud. That's not a problem, but don't be afraid. Come on up. That's why we wanted to stand up too. Hopefully, it helps here. Thanks for coming today, first of all. So I am the Deputy Director. I oversee capital programs for the Parks Department. So any construction that happens in our 209 neighborhood parks, our 11 regional parks, new construction, rehabilitation, project planning, land acquisition, all rolls into my group. So as we move through the phases of design, development, and construction, the contestants will be interfacing with me and my team, as well as our Public Works Department. We'll help you navigate site issues, permitting issues, constructability, those kind of elements as the project moves forward. So welcome to Arena Green. This is what we call Arena Green West. We're going to see Arena Green East shortly, and I'll let Joe talk about the Conservancy and their role, but this is one part of what we call Guadalupe River Park. The park is a linear element that goes from Discovery Meadow in the south up to Coleman Avenue in the north, at which point you're into Guadalupe Gardens, which is another part of the area that is overseen by Guadalupe River Park Conservancy. So all of that is owned by the city and operated by the city at this point in partnership with the Conservancy. So with that, I'll leave that as the introduction and turn it to Joe if he wants to share some of what the Conservancy background is.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning again. We're so excited to have you here and to see all the interest in the park and in this project. So thank you for being here. We are the City of San Jose's nonprofit partner. For the River Park and Gardens, and so in particular we focus on helping to facilitate park development and activation, and so we have three tenets to our mission, which are education, advocacy, and stewardship. As part of my role, I oversee our program staff who deliver the community education programs for children and adults, coordinate the volunteer work that happens in the park, and from time to time I get to work on some of the local partnerships, some kind of project-focused work here. And so we love this park. We want the community to love it even more than they do, and so just what a tremendous opportunity to help the park realize its potential and to fulfill the vision for this space. It's such an exciting time for the downtown area, and I just think we're really going to start seeing a lot of what momentum has been building come into play here in this space. So thank you again, and pass to Steve to share a little more with you all too.
Thank you, Joe. Our organization is really thrilled that we have Parks, Recreation, Neighborhood Services, and the Guadalupe River Park Conservancy as our partners in this. Hi, Bobby. And this is not something that our organization can do alone. I've been working with Nicole for a couple of years. I've been working somewhat with the Conservancy for my whole adult life. But this is a big, complex project that requires lots of different parties to work together to achieve something spectacular. So why are we doing this? A few years ago, a couple of other guys and I, this would be John Ball, who's the chairman of our board, and Tom Woolmott, who's a filmmaker, we all had the same feeling that not just San Jose, but all of Silicon Valley was missing some kind of physical, artistic, architectural landmark. And we thought, if not us, who? If not now, when? And we dove into this thing fully. So we've been working at this for about 3 years. Then we started working with the city. We decided together to do a site selection study. So we had Steinberg Hart, a third party, do a site selection study that studied 7 or 8 sites, all in the downtown core. The entire motivation for us was to do something that was an urban project. This is not a rural or a suburban project. It's an urban project. So working with Nicole and her people and the Public Works Department and other city departments, we had this third party, Steinberg Hart, study all these sites with criteria that we all agreed to together. They did a study, and the study clearly identified this as the best site for something like we were trying to do. So that's how we ended up here at Arena Green. So now we've been working diligently to raise money. We've raised about $1.5 million to date from about 300 donors. We feel like we've got lots of community support. There's been some concern on the part of the environmental community and some parks advocates that we're doing things that are inappropriate. We've tried to address all of those. We intend to partner with every organization, environmental, parks advocates, or anyone else, to make this the best thing we possibly can within all of the constraints that exist due to the riparian corridor and many, many other things. And we'll go through those as we go through the tour in a moment. So just a reminder that we are filming this. So if you miss something, you don't need to take notes. This will all be online probably by Monday. And as Sean said, if you don't want to be on camera, feel free to either pull one of us aside or just send a written question and we will answer it. So with that, let's begin the tour.
With a question, I think.
I'd like to know if
David, one moment. When you're on the microphone, let's all use our big voices, because in addition to the mic recording you, we also would like for everyone else to be able to hear you. So if you would, maybe turn toward the rest of the crowd and be as loud as you can. Thank you, David.
I'm interested to find out if an environmental assessment has been done on this location.
We've had a biology report done, and it's on our website, and it's thorough and relatively detailed, but not equal to CEQA and what might happen downstream. So lots of environmental reporting and assessments will be done during phase 2, and then even farther forward when we're in pre-construction and construction. So we're very conscious of that. But yes, there is a lighting report and a biology report online now that we are already engaged, but there will be more of that. Does that answer your question, David?
Yes.
Okay, let's start the tour.
Sure. Thanks. So I wanted to stop here just for 2 reasons. One is the competition brief outlines a lot of detail about the site and provides quite a bit of information, including some elements of the park that cannot be relocated. One of them is behind me. So the 5 skaters, it talks about the five skaters, which are those pillars there. It is also this reflecting pool, as well as the 3 pillars there. So that is all part of the same piece of artwork that cannot be moved or relocated as part of the project. At the same time, this is a great location to see an element that can be, right? So some of you are standing on a portion of walkway that is donor funded to GRPC. And that is an element that we decided with GRPC could be relocated. We'll need to honor the original donors, but we can find ways to modify how they're honored through the design in the new park. So just wanted to stop here for those couple of things. Is there any questions about that?
Just going to add to that, Nicole. It includes too. There's these. You'll see some of these benches have a little round medallion in the floor, and so the medallion itself is another component of the donor recognition elements that can be relocated on the site.
So for those of you who aren't right in front, you'll see a round bronze plaque next to some of the benches. That's what Joe was just referring to.
A reminder about some of these things like Nicole and Joe just referred to, like these tiles. We don't expect comprehensive plans for how these might be relocated in phase 1. The 3 finalists will be given $150,000 stipends to refine their proposals in phase 2, at which time these, let's call them micro elements or finer elements, can be refined. So I don't want anyone who's submitting to feel like you have to have every tile located in phase 1. It's an ideas competition. And if you read the brief carefully, you'll see it's a high-level idea that we're looking for, of course with drawings, but every last tree in the park does not have to be dealt with in the phase 1 submittals.
So my question is that all of those buildings that we see around will be a stay, or only you want reflection pool and these 5 columns.
So the question was about the buildings over here. So there is a restroom building and a carousel and a ticket booth, carousel, restroom building. The intent is to relocate the carousel to another location in the Guadalupe River Park chain. The other 2 buildings can be removed. They can, basically all of those buildings can be removed as part of the concept.
So the fountain and the 5 skaters and the 3, what did you call that?
The 3 pillars.
3 pillars. Does the footing of those need to stay exactly as it is? Can we change the turf to a different, softer hardscape? Is there something pristine about how these are sitting that we should bear in mind?
I'm going to table that question and get some feedback from our public art group before I answer that.
Hi. Hello. What kind of trees are these surrounding us? Does anybody know? What kind of trees these are? No?
These specifically that we're standing under, I'm not sure. There are several coast live oaks around the ticket booth and the carousel. In addition to some, you'll see some western sycamore along the riparian corridors.
So the question was about just to make sure, did everyone hear that question? The question was about what kind of trees are in the park, and we don't know all of them entirely right at this moment, so we can work on identifying those and provide a written response on the website.
And a follow-up on the tree question, though, is that to the best of our knowledge, there are no heritage trees on the site, so trees can be removed. If they are, we will undoubtedly end up replacing them at some yet to be determined ratio of 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 or 5 to 1. We don't really know what that is, but it's a common protocol in doing projects in parks where trees get changed. Nicole, do you want to expand on that at all, or did I do a good job?
No, you did great.
Great.
You did great.
Question right here.
Yeah, so the reflecting pond is kind of sad right now as a reflecting pond, so I'm wondering, is there a plan for it? Is it going to be filled with water? Is there going to be something else done with it? I mean, it's not really working right now.
So the question was about what's the story with the pool? Why isn't it working? What is it supposed to be? I need to check with our public art program on what the original design intent was of that art. It's part of the art piece.
A general answer that I'd like to offer as part of the mission of our organization We want to work with the Conservancy and Parks and Rec and the City Council and other city departments to make this park spectacular. And if there are elements like the pond that need to be improved, we're not offering the money at this moment to do it, but we expect to have a concerted effort with all interested parties, including all of you who are citizens of San Jose or Silicon Valley, to raise money to make this park spectacular. That's really the premise of our whole project.
Question here.
Yes, thank you. Bob Levy, I have a question about the constraints that you have on the property, two in particular. One is the playground area in this area here. Is that can be relocated, or is that has to stay in place?
So the question was about the playground, and can the playground be relocated? Yes, the playground can be relocated.
All right, and the second one is protection of the riparian corridor. Do you have a setback from top of bank? Is it a 100-foot setback? What's your setback from top of bank?
So the question was about riparian setback on the top of bank. The assumption is the project is going to hold and be consistent with the city's riparian corridor policy, which is 100 feet.
Foot.
Yep. So that is the expectation.
And
that is documented in the competition brief.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's clearly noted on the site map on the website.
Question here. Speak up.
Hi, this is Jeff Looney. I saw in the briefing package there's a site plan, I think it's prepared by Steinberg Group about 10 years ago, let's say, and it documented the Vietnam Memorial, I believe, and several other elements. Was that actually constructed, or was that just for reference?
The question was about some of the elements shown on the site plan that's in the competition brief and in the competition documents, and whether things like the Sons of Vietnam Memorial and the Weaver Gift were constructed. The answer is yes, and they're in Confluence Point, and we're going to walk over there next.
Right, thank you.
And actually the site plan that you see in the resources for submitters section on the website was done by a civil engineering company within the last 6 months.
Yeah.
So that it's not an old or dated site plan, it's up to date.
Okay, one question here, and speak up and rest it on your chin, please.
I just wanted some basic information. So you're going on this tour, you're going to basically tell us everything that is sacrosanct and everything else we can redesign or move or bring into our designs. You're going to locate in our heads everything that you want us to know about.
So his question was whether we're going to review everything that's sacrosanct on this tour so that you know exactly what you can and cannot do. I think my honest answer to that would be no, probably not on this tour. But if you go to our website and you go to the particularly to the site diagram that's in there, it's got listed all of the various components like Nicole was bringing up, and it says whether they are sacrosanct, to use Doug's word, sacrosanct and can't be moved at all, whether they must be moved, or whether they can be moved but don't have to be moved. And there are these various categories that we think is really clear. So my advice would be go there. If that still doesn't answer your question, send a written question and we will answer them all in the Q&A section on our website.
Thank you.
So we're standing in a park that was clearly designed. Can we hear a little bit about that process? Who did it, when it occurred, and so forth?
Sure. The question was, what was the original design of the park? What's the history of the design? So this site was, until the late 1990s, it was a car dealership. So there's an industrial history to this property. In the early mid 90s, Hargraves out of San Francisco did a design. That is the design you see here now. That was implemented by the city's redevelopment agency. And essentially, the design has not changed or been modified since then. And I'll be honest, the design well predates my life in the city, so I can't speak necessarily to design intent and philosophy, but at least I know the history. And we do have the original design drawings of the park. If that is a request, we can release them and have them posted onto the competition website if people are interested in that.
How willing would the SAP Center be to working with the project? In other words, would they allow any modifications to the SAP Center? Assuming they wouldn't have to pay for them.
We've had meetings with many people.
Repeat that. Repeat that question for the louder group.
The question was whether we could modify the SAP Center if the SAP organization or the Sharks did not have to pay for it. The honest answer to the question is we don't know. We've never asked that question, but we have had meetings with lots of people in the Sharks organization, and they're very really interested in what we're doing, but they haven't weighed in yet on it, and we haven't had any specific conversations about them doing anything specific. So you can imagine that in our outreach that we're going to be doing, of course, we're going to be working with all of our neighbors, including the Sharks, Google, and for those of you who aren't clear, if you just look behind you, that's the Google site. It's many, many acres. I want to say 50 or 100 acres of space where Google's going to be building things. So our neighbors would include SAP and the Sharks, Google, the train station, which is a really short walk away, which will be one of the biggest multimodal terminals in the United States in the next 10 or 20 years, and various other neighbors, and we'll be reaching out to all those neighbors. But we don't know the answer to what, if anything, could happen on where the arena is.
2 points of clarification. One is the city owns that facility. It is a city property. The second is early on, we did receive questions about whether structures can cross the roads and cross 87, and the answer posted on the competition website is no. I think there's an expectation at this point that we would confine the project to the park proper. Curb to curb is fine, but not crossing the roads or overhanging the roads.
One more question here.
Okay, so we're in the Blossom Valley that became the Silicon Valley. And so I guess my question is there an intent as far as the image that's being projected from our valley to the world? What is the purpose of this landmark thing that's being presented?
So this question is, what's the purpose?
We're kind of a blending of nature and our current digital world now. So it's the intent or what we're looking at doing.
So what's the intent? Why are we doing this, and what are we hoping to achieve? We seriously considered early on in our project that we were going to have a theme that was developed by us, where we would tell the world this is a project and the theme of it is world peace or global warming or the brotherhood of man or something like that. We chose not to do that. We chose to let you, the designers of the world, determine the theme of your submittal. So we expect to get submittals with every theme imaginable, and we're excited to do that. So we're not really prescriptive about this. We're looking to you, the designers of the world, to tell us what your project means, and then if we are supportive of it, we plan to build it. So we're going to move now over to the foot of the bridge. Again, 100 feet, approximately 30 steps to get a sense for it.
So about where the green pole is, or maybe a little closer.
Maybe in that general area, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Just a quick follow-up on the trail. So would the trail, as one of these components of the project, would it be required to move the trail back parallel to the riparian corridor? So the trail should follow that 100-foot setback?
So question is, will we relocate the trail as part of the project? That's not our current intent. And the primary trail of Guadalupe River Park Trail is actually on the east bank right now. There is a trail planned for this west bank, the Three Creeks Trail, that eventually will connect through here, and this is part of that. But our intent is not necessarily to move it, but it could be.
Okay, great.
I think it's open.
Thank you.
This alignment right here is Los Gatos Creek, and then this alignment is technically a section of the Los Gatos Creek Trail.
Right here.
So are you looking for one person to do this, or would you consider, like, if there were multiple people that had some very good plans, that you could partner with them, they could partner with each other, and that was my first question. And the second question is, so are you looking for one kind of structure, or are you looking to redo this whole park?
There were two questions there. Are we looking for one type of structure or one thing, or are we looking to redo the entire park? Those are all possibilities. We expect to get submittals that might be somewhere near where we're standing right now, one tall thing or one short thing, and leave the rest of the park as is. We expect to get submittals that show components that go throughout Arena Green West and Arena Green East. We expect to get proposals that include bridges or structures that are connected somehow from east to west. And the only reason I know all of this is that we've gotten questions from you, the world of submitters, about all of these things. So again, we're not at all telling you what to design. We're leaving this as really a kind of a blank palette that you can do with as you'd like. And then the other question was about, when we get to the finalists, will we combine proposals? That's a really interesting question. We've talked about it a lot, and we think the answer is possibly yes. That especially, imagine that we get a fabulous landscape idea with a fabulous sculptural idea. Those things might really combine beautifully. So we have the right to do that if we choose to do so. And that also speaks to your other question about something that was only a small part of the park. We, the Conservancy, PRNS, would all want to improve the park in any ways we can. So there might be a number of components that we end up having in our final buildable design.
But you can also collaborate beforehand. Right? Could you just clarify that?
She asked a really logical follow-up, which is, can you collaborate beforehand? And the answer is absolutely yes. And we hope we get collaborations among artists, architects, landscape architects, water designers, anybody else, lighting people, whatever it might be. Okay. So you can have a team, you can be an individual, or you can have a team that's as large as you like.
We'll keep moving.
We are moving.
Oh.
The bridge that we're about to cross is something that could be modified, but we have to have the bridge. So this bridge will not be eliminated.
So ladies and gentlemen, a great point by Nicole is we're already 45 minutes into the tour and we've only gotten to this far. We can walk and talk and answer questions too, which is a kind of a dynamic thing, right? But we want to answer just enough questions while we're together, and then we're going to walk. And so we can take, conserve your time this afternoon as well.
But please don't be shy about asking questions. We want to answer all of your questions.
So before you do, I want to give a quick overview of this area. So this is an area known as Confluence Point. It shows up on mapping as such. Generally speaking, this whole space has public art embedded throughout it that cannot be relocated. In the competition brief, it's referenced as the Weaver Gift. The Sons of Vietnam Memorial is up along Santa Clara Street. Those are elements that have been identified that can't be relocated. The other thing, so that we crossed over, as Joe mentioned earlier, Los Gatos Creek, and this is Guadalupe River here, and the confluence is right there, hence the term Confluence Point. So heavy riparian corridor through here. Steve mentioned the bridge, so I won't mention that, but I do want to mention that Guadalupe River is the subject of extensive flood control improvements. So you'll see concrete work all up and down, upstream and downstream, as well as through here. There's also an element, and it shows up in the mapping, but you see it really well from here. There is a bypass channel and culvert that goes out and under Arena Green East. And its routing shows up in the mapping, but you're gonna wanna be aware of that, right? If you're gonna do any kind of structure in Arena Green East, because you will be influenced heavily by the location of that culvert. Joe, do you wanna add anything about visitor center or anything?
So the building adjacent to the Guadalupe River to your right is the Satellite Visitor Center, and so that's another one of the entities that will stay, and that's described as a park serving use that the Conservancy is guiding. So that's another fixed element. You'll see there's some part of the Children at Play sculpture series that is at different points throughout the length of the park is stationed here too. So those are the children there before the hedges.
And we're going to walk right by those
Street
in a minute.
We'll pass by. So that's another art element.
We've gotten one moment. We've gotten a number of questions over the last couple of months about footings and penetrations into the ground. Nicole just referred to these box culverts that are on the other side. The site will never be flooded because I guess one should never say never, but there has been a flood control plan already implemented here for a 100-year flood or something similar to that. There was a flood here 20 or 30 years ago, which led to hundreds of millions of dollars being spent by the Army Corps of Engineers and other entities to create these box culverts and do other flood control mitigations. So we don't need to worry about flood. But some people have been very concerned about penetrations for footings. We've had a lot of questions about whether things can span the two rivers, the river and the creek. And the answer is yes, that could be done. So then the next question logically is, what do the penetrations look like? We don't expect that to be fully analyzed in phase one, and phase one is what we're in right now. So we encourage all of you, whether you're here in person or watching this online, to make creative proposals. And in phase two, when we have the 3 finalists who have gotten their $150,000 stipends, that we can study the civil engineering associated with that. All of you designers and engineers I know have lots of very technical questions about the civil engineering of it, but that's going to happen in phase two and even phase three when we're in pre-construction after we've chosen a winner. Ma'am?
Yeah, I just was wondering if power lines can move.
Thank you very much for that question. I was about to answer it without the question, so even better. So all of you can see there are some tall poles with power here. There is currently no plan to relocate these. However, the Google project, and is going to involve the combination of the Google project and BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit arriving, is going to involve an immense electrical load that is not even calculated at this point. Those projects are both moving forward right now. There's a PG&E substation just on the other side of the train station, probably a quarter of a mile or a third of a mile from where we're standing. We expect that this whole Google project and BART will be undergrounding all of their electrical power. We hope that these overhead lines will end up either being relocated or either put underground or put somewhere else. But at this moment in time, we can't tell you what is going to happen. But we're hopeful because many designers would certainly prefer that those power poles are not on the site.
And And for those of you who don't know, Google has submitted preliminary development plans to the city. So you can find them online. I'm not even sure where we could. You know what? Let's get them and we'll link to them. But because if you want to see context, you can just understand what they're thinking.
Question here.
Sure.
Yes, I was wondering, are there any design constraints on either the height or the footprint of what you have? And also, if something spans the river or rivers, doesn't that come against the riparian setback?
The answer is that crossing the rivers does not violate the riparian setback. There will be other constraints having to do with shade and other things, birds, fish, etc. But as such, no. And he asked about constraints related to height and footprint. In terms of height, the limits on Arena Green West and East are approximately 200 feet. And what we've said in the brief is use 200 feet as your maximum height, knowing that it's going to be slightly higher when we get into phase two. There are maps available that show the precise height limits at every location on both sides, but for the purposes of phase one, just use 200 feet. Second question was about the footprint. The footprint can be anywhere on Arena Green West and Arena Green East, other than the areas that Nicole's spoken to and that you can see on the site map that say you cannot do anything here.
Should we move on? These are part of we are standing on part of the art installation that's called the Weaver Gift.
What are these names?
They're Ohlone names.
So Nicole, are we just moving right
I
over
think-
there?
Yeah, yes.
You might want to hold your questions over here.
Sure.
And we're moving.
Okay.
For those folks who want to submit a question online, the best way to do that is to
send an email to competition@Urban Confluence, and that appears everywhere on the website. You'll have no trouble finding it.
And it's a good opportunity to go to the website to check out all that information, all the maps, and anyway. So we had a question right here.
Yeah. So I want to know that building and that area will stay or will go?
The question is, will the area we were just in, Confluence Point, and that building stay or go? Our expectation is it will stay. Confluence Point is loaded with public art that will not be relocated, and that building is, at this point, planned to stay. And we're assuming what about Confluence Point in the competition? That it's not, that won't be impacted, but there could be some modest enhancements.
I like the way Nicole phrased that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So we're. When you want to go?
Actually, let me expand on that a little bit.
Okay.
Confluence Point is essentially exempt from the competition. It's not part of the site. But if someone suggested something that enhanced it significantly, I can't imagine that Nicole at Parks and Rec or the City Council or the Parks Commission wouldn't be interested in doing it. So it wouldn't necessarily be part of our competition, but it might be another gift to our city.
Okay, just a second.
Great. Well, that Okay, that was a great segue into what I wanted to say, because I think there's some great opportunities for improving Confluence Point. Since Confluence Point is the confluence of our two largest riparian corridors, and an incredibly important area from an environmental perspective, to see it covered with bricks and concrete there, I think is sort of criminal to the environmental world. It should really be something that's more natural, something that's habitat friendly. So I'd love to see something changed in Confluence Point. The second thing is I have a question about the constraints on light pollution to the corridor. This is, like I was saying, an important riparian corridor. It's our wildlife corridor, and we need to make sure that we don't have too much light pollution in there. So are there going to be constraints on the program as far as light pollution is concerned?
I'd like to take the second question and then have Nicole and Joe take the first question. There is a very specific lighting report that you can see online and a biology report, and both of them actually deal with lighting. Our intention in getting those experts, biologists and lighting experts, to write this was to indeed protect the riparian corridor, fish, birds, plants, and there are all kinds of lighting constraints associated with that. You can't point lights up above the top of the structure. There will be shielding at the bottom so that we're not shining light at fish, that we're respecting birds as far as reflective surfaces are concerned, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd encourage all of you to go read the biology report and the two lighting papers.
Thank you very much.
I think the second question was about, or the first question was about Confluence Point and the nexus to nature. You know, the development of that area was done long before I was here. You know, again, I think I think it's up to the designers how they handle that area and if they want to make modest changes. But again, a large portion of that hardscape relates to public art elements that aren't going to be able to be relocated or removed. I wanted to pause here actually for a moment, just because this is a good sort of location to see Arena Green East, right? So this is the portion of the park we're in now. Tennis courts and futsal / field, floor hockey, street hockey, you know, some green space. There was at one time a roadway through here, which is, as you can see, the development of the park never really got completed. People do park in here to use the tennis courts, but they don't need to continue to be able to. I'm just letting you know how the space is used right now. The main channel of Guadalupe River Trail is running through, not channel, but the main leg of it is running right through here, this paved. And that trail actually can get you from Virginia Street and hopefully eventually from Almaden Lake in South San Jose. And it gets you all the way out to El Viso. Right, so the city has a goal of 100 miles of interconnected bikeway, off-street bikeway, this is one of the most connected segments, right? You can right now ride a bike without being on street from Virginia Street, a few blocks south, all the way to El Viso. Eventually, you'll be able to go all the way from Almaden to El Viso. So it's a really important recreation amenity that is really a strong part of our identity in the park system and really important to us as a parks department that it be preserved. So there will always want to be, and this is a trail segment that gets about 1 million users a year on bikes. It's a commuter route, it's a recreational route, and that will always continue to be. The trail could be relocated, we can talk about that, but it needs to continue to be connected at all as a part of the project.
Hey, if I may ask, by show of hands, how many people will be submitting? By show of hands. This is great. This is fantastic. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And there's another question back here.
I have a question about those playgrounds. Those can be removed?
The question was about the tennis courts and futsal and whether it can be removed. The competition brief addresses that, and yes, it says, our expectation is they can be removed. If they are removed, they are going to be relocated as part of the project to another area in Guadalupe River Park. And we'll have to work that out with the competition.
Question?
Will submitted entries be shared with the public prior to finalists being selected, and will you take public opinion into account?
Yes, every submittal will be shared with the public. And just to talk about process for a moment, after these are all shared, then we're going to have what's called a community competition panel, including local professionals and local residents and various kinds of parties, probably 30 to 40 people. They will take all of these submittals and they'll winnow it down to approximately 50 of what we might call semifinalists. And then the jury will look at those 50, but the jury's instructions will clearly state that they can look at all of the submittals if they want to. Some jurors will, some jurors won't, probably. The question about whether the opinions of the public will be taken into account, that would depend on the specific members of the community competition panel and the jury, and whether they want to read those or not. But there won't, the community as such won't have a vote, like a People's Choice Award or something like that.
Want to head up to St. John?
Move.
All right, let's do it. A question that I just got as we approached here was, what is the northern terminus of the project? It is this roadway right here, St. John Street. One question that I got as we approached this plaza was, what is the northern terminus of the project? It is this roadway behind me, which is St. John Street. The project area does not include the next segment of green space upstream of or downstream of here. Or north of here. But this is another good area to kind of get the overview of Arena Green East. This is an event space. Regular community events and gatherings happen here. Things like
the Turkey Trot Finish Line Expo.
And they just did the Italian Festival. So there's a number. This is our Little Italy, that neighborhood to the north, for those of you who know the area. And I was just reviewing the brief as we were walking up. So there were amenities on site that cannot be moved but can be activated or improved. We are standing on one of those right now. This is the St. John Street Overlook Plaza. We were just at the Santa Clara Street Overlook Plaza. That's where the last gathering point was. So these are quite frankly, part of the flood control project, right? We're standing on that culvert still. So, so I thought I'd pause here just to give you a little orientation and give a minute for people to reflect. And if there's questions, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you earlier. Is this green space available for our designs?
The question is that green space available for the designs? Yes, it is.
Taking the 100-foot riparian setback into account. So again, if you look at the site map, you'll see that it. So we always get some local color, and that was it for today.
San Jose.
Again, if you follow the riparian setback follows the river. So again, to answer Doug's question, there's the majority of the space on this side is available, but the area near the river is not available. Yeah, for the most part, depending on where the line is. Yeah.
Essentially, the grass area is.
Other questions? Yeah. If not, we'll move on. We're going to go across the bridge and back over to a Green and Green West. Thanks. One question that came up on the walkover was just further clarification about the trail. Right? And you saw a lot of bikers moving through there. So I think we're open to some degree to a relocation of that within the east side, but it does need to be relocated. It cannot be eliminated. So, Joe wanted to talk a little bit about some of the riparian corridor and some of the wildlife that we see around here.
Yeah, thanks. Just to give you a lay of the land, I think you'll find interesting some of the wildlife context for this area. So you see there are salmon featured on some of the park signage. In 2011, king salmon were found spawning just under this bridge we just crossed, St. John Street. So a lot of historically this has been, thousands of salmon have run up this river every year to spawn. The numbers have reduced since some of the flood control work was done. However, a lot of these bridges that cross over the river in the downtown area are suitable sites for spawning to this day. So I think something neat to think about. In addition, in 2012, beaver appeared just south of this bridge. Just south of the St. John Street Bridge, beaver for the first time in 100 years showed up in the Santa Clara Valley and started felling one of the willow trees in the area to create a dam, and so the site was suitable for damming. And so they've since been spotted elsewhere in the Los Gatos Creek channel, but just kind of another kind of neat thing to think about. Very much still a vibrant wildlife corridor right here.
And steelhead are in the river and probably always have been. I've seen egrets. I know I think they're called box turtles. Lots of fish and lots of other birds. So one of the takeaways is these urban parks sometimes, despite the flood control channeling that was done, which our expert from Cal Trout said that if you were going to design an area of a river that was the worst possible habitat for fish, it would be what we have. Yeah. Where it's been channelized. So that wasn't done to take care of wildlife. That was done as a flood control project. It was done to move water. So that doesn't mean we can't do better, which we all want to do, but it's fascinating how resilient animals are and that they can live in these environments that have been completely modified for flood control or for other reasons. But if you do ride the trail, you'll see ducks, geese, egrets, other birds. I never got to actually see the beavers, but I have friends who have. So we want to make that even a better place for animals.
Okay. I had a question. So we mentioned relocating park elements.
We need to have a mic.
Playground and carousel.
Let's repeat that.
So we mentioned relocating some of the elements within the park. Is there a proposed location for these relocations should we need to use that space for our design? Is there a place somewhere else that it would be, you mentioned 7 other sites that were looked at previously.
So the question, if I understood it, and I'm going to make sure I understood it, was for elements that are in...
I guess Dionne Warwick was right. People did find their way to San Jose. This is interesting.
So I want to make sure I understood it. So make sure I'm parroting back correctly that for elements in the park that we've identified that can be relocated, like the playground, like the tennis courts, have we identified alternative locations for them?
Yeah. Or do they need to get relocated within the site?
Good question. And I'm going to think about that. I know the tennis courts we have an alternative location for that is not in the site. But the carousel has a location not on the property. The rest of them, let me think about that.
And if you have specific follow-ups to
Yeah.
that, send them in writing and we will answer them. Oftentimes Nicole and I have other people we have to collaborate with
Yeah.
in order to answer questions.
Is the carousel being used?
Hi, I just had a quick question.
Mhm.
Thanks. Since we're next to the river, I just was curious, are there any points along the river that are especially for people to get closer to the river? Or approach the river?
Yeah, so the question is, are there opportunities along the river for people to interact with them? To interact with the river, not in this section. And I need to check on how available that is based on the flood control work. Certainly we can't remove the walls to make that access. But so let's post a response on water quality and the ability for people to interact. There was another question about the carousel and whether the carousel is active. It is not currently. There is a current plan in progress to relocate it to another part of Guadalupe River Park. That will either be done as part of this project or in advance of the project, depending on fundraising.
Why is that? Why would you? I mean, just because?
Why is it being relocated, or why is it not working?
Or why is it being relocated?
Because this is not the most active area of the park. We're going to relocate it next to a major playground amenity that's in another area of the park, so it becomes more of a, it connects more effectively, yeah.
So kind of weighing that, the original design intent relative to how the park's been used in the 15 years that it's open, and figuring out kind of where's the best fit for it.
All right, I think we're going to go that way. And just so you can see some of the other element of the park, if we continue down this path, we're going to go right back to the footbridge that we crossed over originally. So we're going to go across the lawn, you'll get closer to the playground. And
It's not definite yet, no.
We wanted you in the gold
So
medal
this is-
position.
just gives you another glimpse of another area of the park, right? So this is, again, Arena Green West. We're kind of looping back to where we started from. You can see the footbridge, this just end of the footbridge that we crossed over originally. But this is a different kind of vibe of the park. So I thought this is all part of the Hargrave design from the 90s. With the rolling hills, and then the playground so the playground was structurally damaged due to age, and so needed to be replaced. At this point, we removed the damaged elements and didn't replace them, and don't intend to, because we're just waiting to see what happens with the competition. So the playground looks pretty decrepit at this point and pretty sad. There's not a lot of amenities there. It gives you another angle, and we're going to walk up again past the carousel, which is not open, and a restroom building and the ticket building, all of which are up for grabs as part of the competition. And we're going to end up back at the Palms, but we have time to answer a few questions here if people are.
To point out too, these are the some of the coast live oak. Someone was asking about trees earlier. So this, at present, these are largely coast live oak in this area.
We've had a number of questions from submitters about topographic maps, and we're working on getting more maps. But you can really see from right here that the site is relatively flat, really both Arena Green East and West, and this is more for people who are listening online than those of you who are here today. But there are not huge mounds or a huge amount of elevation changes on the entire site. Also, just one other thing that you might appreciate right here is the entire site's approximately 15 acres. And of the 15 acres, approximately 5 of the acres are buildable, about a little over 3 on the west side where we are now, and about 1.5 or 1.7 on the other side, just to get a sense for the scale of the area that we can actually do something in. And then the 2/3 of the site is the river, the creek, and the riparian corridors.
Questions? There's a question back there.
Where?
Back.
Oh, hold on.
That guy worked for me when we were both about 20.
He was saying.
Would it be possible, if any of us here have photographs that are really good, that they could send them to your organization and we could all share those if everyone felt that that was something they wanted to do?
Well, we're he asked, the question is, does anyone have nice photos to submit to you? What we're doing here is we're videotaping everything. And we're going to go through another round when you all leave. So, and there'll be a number of photos available on the website for people to look and refer to.
Doug, is the question about good photos of the site that show it better?
Some of us have cell phone cameras, which get pretty dorky. Others have really good ones. You know, and I can see people paying a lot of attention that have photographic skill set broader than mine. And I was just wondering if we could share those, then others of us might be able to, utilize some of that good skill set.
That's a wonderful suggestion in the day of social media. If any of you would send photos to me, and you can either send them to me, I'm Steve, or competition at Urban Confluence. Again, these are all on our website. We will post good photos. And if you demand attribution, then say that in your email. But we'd love to have more photos of the site. Many of you probably have already gone online and just done a search on Arena Green West or East. There are lots of photos and even animations and other things available online. But if you share them with us, we will share them with the world.
And just one word of caution that commercial photography in parks does require a permit. So just if you're taking them for sale and you plan to sell them, just beware. I think for use in the competition, that's fine. But if you're going to sell them, just beware that there's a permit requirement.
And we would not be selling them or buying them. We would simply be sharing them.
Correct.
Step up.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this park. I mean, how currently is it used? Is it used for events, or there's normal things that happen? How many people? Is that all information on the site? So I mean, so get an idea of how it's used. And then also the riparian corridor. It's the way it is now because of different reasons. Is that sacred? Can the riparian...
Plane pause.
Can the riparian corridor be evaluated? Can it be involved in this in some way, or is that the limit? In other words, there's a lot of land here that's...
Right. I could speak a bit to the kind of current use. A lot right now. This area plays host to a lot of community runs, 5Ks, 10Ks. There's been, especially in the fall and the spring, there's a lot of those events that use this as a base and then go out and back on trails. A fair amount of pre-Sharks game or pre-arena event traffic, so kids using the existing playground area before an event there. Some pass through. We've seen some folks going through on scooters, or we talked about the commuter trail use earlier. But a lot of room for it to be a lot more active and to be something that you go through, not around, if you need to get somewhere. So I think be mindful of the fact that right now it is more of something that I go around and not necessarily through to get to my destination, depending on certainly time of day.
And for those who are participate in social media, please share your experience, of the exciting things happening here today on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat.
Yes, I heard an implication in that you would like some public access to be maintained in these areas for runs and for all the events that happen here. Is that correct?
I think be mindful of that, given that it is a popular use for that sort of activity at present. But I don't know that it's limited to that necessarily either. But there is a community base, and it's kind of one of the premier downtown event spaces at present.
Steve, did we share with you an event list? I mean, is that on the website? Because we permit all the events through the park system, so we actually could give a list of every event permitted.
We will post it
over a calendar year. It might be helpful for
Great
people
idea.
to see, and it's estimated quantities of people that participate are included.
And we hope to expand that dramatically. We'd love to have people here 365 days a year doing all the things people do in urban parks, and in the rest of the world.
I want to go back to the question from over here, because I think we didn't answer the second question about the river. And I'm going to...
Can you restate it?
Yeah, the question, if I understood it correctly, was can the river be part of the design? In my mind, the implication was perhaps habitat enhancement, restoration, access. Well, our answers are going to be dramatically different, because I would say absolutely. You know, if one of the designs is about opening up that channel, removing concrete walls, building naturalized floodplain, I'm all for it as a park system. However, I'm not sure that's what the competition envisions.
We had previously seen the entire river and creek and inside the riparian corridor as sacrosanct and untouchable. That doesn't mean we're not going to get submittals that violate the letter or the spirit of what we're saying. I think all of us as citizens would love to see the river improve, but it's really not within the scope of our competition at this point.
That's what cities are doing,
right?
We'd like to be a catalyst for things like that to happen. Maybe that's a way to say it that I think Nicole and Joe and I would all share.
Hey, can you talk about this being a destination point where people gather, a confluence as part of the name? You know, and this happens in Europe and in large spaces where, you know, communities gather to celebrate in an area. And that,
I'll take the flip side of Joe's answer earlier about the fact that we have races and runs and community events here. There aren't enough of them. There aren't enough people in this park on a daily basis. It's immensely underutilized, and we want it to be utilized constantly. Again, think of the parks, the Golden Gate Parks and the Central Parks of New York and Luxembourg Gardens and the places around the world that you all love. There are hundreds of people there all the time. That's what we would like to have here. So what does that look like? We don't know. That's why we're engaging all the creative people of the world to come up with ideas that will end up with people drinking coffee, eating ice cream. You know, can we have restaurants and bars? Sure, that can be part of the submittals. We'll have to have a process with the city where we decide what is realistic and what isn't realistic. But we want you to be immensely creative and build a place that millions of people a year want to come to.
I think too, thinking about just what's that something that's gonna make sure that when you go through what'll be the Grand Central of the West, that you get off in San Jose so you can see that something that's in Guadalupe River Park, or when you fly over going into Mineta Airport, what's that something that you might fly over and be like, oh gosh, when I get off the plane, I gotta go see what that is, that's really cool. This site lends it to those kind of things that I think is just so exciting.
The reason this site was chosen is it has the most potential of all the sites. This is the only really grand site among the ones that we studied.
you had her hand up.
Hi. Yeah, you had mentioned that you can do a bridge across the river or structure. So does that mean the footings have to be beyond that 100-foot riparian corridor?
That's a really good question. Could you all hear that? The question is whether all the footings for some kind of structure would have to be outside of the riparian corridor. The answer is that we're not sure. That clearly if they are outside of the riparian corridor, that would be fine. Inside, there may be some room to do that. We don't know the answer. We'll probably have to deal with that in phase 2 if there are footings of any kind that are inside the riparian corridor. And there are lots of rules and regulations of various organizations, just starting with Parks and Rec, the Conservancy, Army Corps, Santa Clara Valley Water District, and others. So my answer is it's not completely clear whether any penetrations could be made inside of the riparian corridor. Nicole, do you want to take that?
No, I think you answered it.
Okay, great.
Yep, we've got one back here.
This is a much less visionary question. Are you going to list on the website who attended this tour?
Our intention was not to list on the website who is attending this tour.
Okay. One more question over here. Oh.
Hi. There'll be a lot of people coming here. What's your vision for providing access, parking, and those that are less familiar with this area? How will guests get in and kind of the lay of the land a little bit from?
Sure. Yeah, so I think that speaks to the larger context of where San Jose is going with its downtown and the vision that it has and the vision that Google has. There will always be parking for the SAP Center, right? And there are requirements the Sharks have about parking. And so a lot of parking is being removed as part of Google. It is intended to be replaced. However, as a general rule, this is a city that is really working hard to advance pedestrian and bike access everywhere. And our whole goal and hope is to make it easier for people to be biking and walking, and quite frankly, more difficult to be driving. Right, so I would hope that anything in here, one of the things we're doing right now, just as a park system, is advancing installation of bike parking everywhere we can, right? Every park needs to have bike parking and bike access. And so, thinking about that and keeping that in mind, and Google is doing a very transit-oriented development. That's the reason they're near Diridon, where the confluence of hopefully eventually high-speed rail, Caltrain, and BART are going to happen right here on Santa Clara Street. So our hope is that most people won't be needing parking when they're here. If they do, there will be limited amount available, but yeah, transit, thinking transit and bike ped.
I concur with everything Nicole just said. In our site study, we also studied parking, just to be clear, and within a 10 or 15-minute walk, there are literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of parking spaces. So in some of these suburban environments like San Jose, oftentimes people won't walk more than 100 feet. But in normal urban environments, and in the urban environments of the future, people are going to be walking farther for health and for lots of other reasons, partly just because parking might cost you $50 an hour or whatever it might be. So part of my answer is there's lots of parking within a reasonable walk. We are not going to be building more parking here.
Correct.
It's time to walk.
Sure, so one question that just came up as we were walking back over was some confusion about the riparian corridor. So let me take a whack at that. I think we, as a department, certainly don't want to cover the channel, right? One of the questions that came in very early was about covering the channel, right? Do I want a building over that river? No. But if a new bridge is to be built and it's a 15-foot wide span, there's going to be environmental impacts associated with it from shade and shadow that we need to deal with during design, and we may or may not be able to address ultimately, right? It becomes a CEQA question. But it shouldn't be precluded necessarily. I think the assumption is that footings would need to be outside the riparian corridor. I don't think they have to be, but I think life's going to be really hard for the design team and in environmental permitting if they're not. Another concern that was expressed, and this is something that we as a city talk about a lot, right, is green space. That we don't have enough green space in this city, and in a rapidly urbanizing downtown core, how do we manage and maintain that? So, the competition envisions a lot of change for this area, but I would just throw that out there, right, to you all as designers, is thinking about green space, thinking about connection to nature, just something that's really important to us as a city and really important to us as a parks department, despite the urban environment. And so with that, I will zip it.
Yeah, I would echo that. So 2.6 mile long linear park, 254 acres of green space in our urban core. I think it's just so powerful to think what a precious opportunity we have and space that we have that other communities would envy. So I hope you're excited. I hope you're inspired. It's a really neat space. There's a really neat vision around this and an evolving vision, and I was kind of sharing with someone, it's unlike other of the big Bay Area cities. I think San Jose is a little bit of the underdog. However, we have a blank canvas and a lot of room to create the fabric for what the future is going to look like here, where other communities, things are more built out, and that window's kind of closed, but it's here, and it can be right here in this park.
Sean. Now is the right time for final questions, so if anybody has them after this lady, please raise your hand.
I was wondering that, maybe why it's underused is because of all the noise pollution that's coming from the planes that we just noticed. Is there any way of rerouting some of that?
The question is whether we can reroute the airplanes that are landing, and the answer is no. There are other organizations that could consider doing that, but we are not one of them. So we consider the fact that we're on the flight path to be a given. And we're in the middle of a city. Yes, it's noisy. In addition to the airplanes, there's car noise now. There is other kinds of noise, and it's just the nature of an urban park.
And I would just add to that we think part of the reason it's underutilized is not because of the space or the noise, it's because there's no residential around here, right? I mean, look around you, there's parking lots everywhere, there's old industrial, there's never been a nexus of people at this particular location, and that is gonna change, and it's gonna change rapidly in the next 10 to 15 years. And that's going to have a big influence on this space. And so the exciting thing about this opportunity is being ahead of that curve, right? That this is going to be a focal point, and this will be connecting to other green space to the south in the Google development that is going to, be a linear asset. And so this will become a more important space. It will be the largest of the spaces, even post-Google. Right? This will continue to be the largest green space and largest public park space in the area. So there's exciting opportunity there.
We think it's a unique moment in time for San Jose and Silicon Valley in general, because remember, when I spoke earlier, there's no landmark in Silicon Valley if you define it as not including San Francisco. And one might define Silicon Valley to include San Francisco, and if you do, clearly there are lots of landmarks in San Francisco, the incredible things, but apart from San Francisco there aren't. So we think this is a unique moment. As Nicole was saying, we're going to have many thousands, if not tens of thousands of housing units, millions of square feet of commercial space, all kinds of development right around here. The BART station is going to be right next to where we're standing. It's going to be a whole new time for us in a few years, and so we think our timing on our project is perfect to be part of this sort of seismic shift in downtown San Jose. Any other questions before I wrap things up?
I have a question about not site. I have a question about the presentation of the three panel that you put it in the site. And one of them you say that you want the size be 24 by 36, but other one hasn't any dimension. So I want see what they are.
You're talking about the design presentation board?
Yeah.
Thank you for that question. I meant to address that already. So all of you designers who have already registered to submit or have already submitted, and just a reminder, if you've already submitted, you can change your submittal right up to the deadline as many times as you want. You can redo, withdraw, start over, do whatever you want. But we are just about to announce very much a softening of the rules related to the design presentation board. We've got a huge pushback from the design community about the rigidity of our criteria for this design board that's ultimately going to be submitted. So we're going to change it. For example, it can be landscape or portrait. We're going to allow you to use the space differently. I think it's speaking to what you're asking about here. So we're trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. And this week we will be posting these new criteria, we might call them. If you're not already on our email distribution list, I suggest you are, because there are going to be constant communications about revisions and modifications and things that we go through. This is a dynamic competition. It's once in a lifetime. Very few people have ever done anything like this. So please, if you haven't already done so, please share your email address with us. Were there any other questions?
So I know there's 1.5 million already raised for the project. Is there a target goal that you guys are looking to fundraise?
The answer is no. We have intentionally not put a cap on the budget of this. We think it'll be easier to raise larger sums of money for something that's world-class and spectacular than it would be to raise smaller sums of money for something that's pedestrian or small thinking. So we want you to think as large as possible without thinking about the budget. Of course, every project has some kind of maximum budget, whatever it might be, but you should not be thinking that way now. Insofar as that's an issue in phase 2 or phase 3 downstream, we would be dealing with that if necessary.
And as Steve had mentioned, in previous get-togethers, that this has never happened ever in the city, and this is a gift to the city of San Jose. Is that?
Even bigger than that, it's never happened in Silicon Valley. So early on, people would say, well, what about the Apple spaceship, or what about the NVIDIA building? These are spectacular pieces of architecture, but they're not public. Right. We can't even go there. I had a friend who had just retired from Apple after 30 years, and I said, what do you think of the spaceship? And he said, I can't get in. They won't let me go and see it. Just to show how private, there are probably some Apple people here, I'm going to guess, to show how private the Apple spaceship is, as an example. This is the diametrical opposite of the Apple spaceship. This is a gift to the world. We want everybody, local, regional, national, international, to see this as the place you come to when you come to visit San Jose or Silicon Valley. And that's what our goal is, and that's why there's no budget at this point. There's no maximum budget. Any other questions?
I just want to make one comment as we wrap up.
Nicole has a comment.
Okay, just as we wrap up, I just want to make one thing clear and make one comment. Joe and I are here and we support the project, but do not ask us questions. Do not email us. Email your questions to Steve. Steve and I talk regularly, and it's really important for the integrity of the competition that the communications run through Steve's group and not be coming directly to us, because then we'll never be sure that everyone's getting the same information, and that's really important to us. We want there really to be a level playing field and a fair playing field, so please don't email me or Joe.
So that email address again?
competition@urbanconfluencesiliconvalley.com or steve@urbanconfluencesiliconvalley.com. They are both .org, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that again.
Yes.
competition@urbanconfluencesiliconvalley.org. competition@urbanconfluencesiliconvalley.org. And again, it's all over the website. I'm extremely easy to find. My cell phone number is also there. But a reminder, like Nicole and Sean both said, is that it's critical to the integrity of our competition that all submitters have the same information. And that's why we're going to post this video in a couple of days for people around the world. And all questions that come, they're all answered online so that you all get to see the same thing. It would be incredibly unfair because you are here today that you have access to information that other people don't have. So I'll wrap by saying how much we appreciate you attending today. This is not the end of communication. You can call, you can email. I'd really appreciate comments from any and all of you about our website. If you'd like us to include more information, just let us know. Nicole mentioned a number of things today that we're going to add. Every time we have meetings like this, we learn more about what you, the design community, and the non-design community for that matter, are interested in knowing, and we want our website to be a valuable resource for you in all ways. So with that, I hope you all submit, and thank you very much.
Well, and yes. So don't forget, I know you're going to go home and go, oh, I had a question. Email it. Email the question. Submit your designs. We're so excited to see that. And share on social media, especially any photos of today and your experience and the exciting things happening here in San Jose, Silicon Valley, and, well, your city.
One question. Do you have a hashtag that you want us to use when we post on social media?
We'll answer that after the fact.
Okay. So
thank you all.
For Nicole Burnham, Joe Salvato, and Steve Borgenhagen, my name is Sean O'Kane. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thank you for coming, everybody.